Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Great to see such a busy crowd in person, in real life. So good to be back together again. Also, thank you to everybody who is joining us online. That's also very important in our hybrid world. So a big welcome to you all. My name is Wendy Mitchell. I'm a film journalist and moderator and festival consultant. I'm thrilled to be leading some of the discussions today. We've got 2 panels and an extra speaker, and I think it's just the perfect time for us to come together. We've had a crazy 2 years, haven't we? And now we're coming together to talk about where we're at now and where we're going in the future. And I wanted to think, this is a co-production with more partners than Triangle of Sadness. I want to say a really big thank you to our organizers because they put a lot of thought into how today was going to be designed, what we want to talk about, what we want to get out of this. So a big thank you to CEPI, Eurocinema, Europa Distribution, Europa International, FIAF, FIAD, FERA, FSE, IVF, and UNIC. And if I left anybody off the list, somebody come tell me later. But really, a huge thank you to all of them for their thoughts in how we wanted to structure today, and I'm really honored to get to be the one to talk to these people, all these experts from really across the value chain, and that's the power of all these different organizations coming together, representing different voices across our very diverse industry. So, to set the scene, I'm very delighted. I'm going to welcome up to the stage Mira Streleva, who is Managing Director of Sofia Film Festival and Sofia Meetings. And goodness, Mira is so busy. She's a producer, exhibitor, distributor. She's got Sofia Meetings happening in just a few weeks. So it's amazing she's even in Cannes, much less able to share some thoughts with us. So Mira, thank you so much for helping us set the scene.
Thank you, Wendy. It was a brief presentation, basically starting with this. Maybe that's why I was chosen to set the scene, because of the different hats I have. The festival, the co-production market, the producing, the distribution, and the cinema. So, what happened with us? Where we are? Obviously, there is kind of a crisis, because if for 2 years you cannot work properly, it is a crisis, it's a big crisis. But every crisis comes with solutions and come with time to reflect and to see, to have the time, and it's a luxury, to see it from outside. So I'm sure that we can come out of this with great ideas, kind of, to bring the industry together. Because this industry is interconnected all the time. When we start from the filmmakers, from directors and scriptwriters, going the whole teams, the producers, the distributors, the sales agents, the distributors, the cinemas, and the audience. So we are talking about one circle, which we have to take care in any stage, at every level. So, let me just place myself. Just before 2020, when COVID came, what was happening with the film industry? Actually, it was quite vibrant, quite thriving. Many new festivals, many new productions. Distribution was doing quite well. Actually, there was a record. I will tell you how much exactly, 1.36 billion admissions in 2019. So once you get to this level, it's a bit dramatic to fall down and to start from the very beginning. Not from the very beginning, of course, but one of the problems that I would define is the changing of the habits, because once you're not supposed to go out to meet people and to meet them in the cinema, what you do? Kind of you automatically go more online, but these habits are changed by force majeure. That's not the natural need of us, of the audience. The natural needs are usually connected with the social experience and with the emotional experience, which you can have only in the cinema theater. That's how the film started as an art. That's why we need these temples of the cinema industry, the cinema theaters. So, what was the impact of COVID? on what happened, kind of for the directors and for the script writers. Okay, they maybe might have had much more time to write or to think about, but at the end of the day, in most of the time, they're not employed, so they couldn't even benefit from the social scheme and from the social structures which were established to help the people. For the producers, it was another drama because most of the productions which were set to happen did not happen. They were interrupted. Some of them recovered, some didn't, because not all the countries were able to provide support again, even to meet the raised budget due to the COVID restrictions. So kind of many colleagues really had very difficult time producing. And not only that, with the short shooting hours, with all the complications on the set, with the additional people that you have to hire, you can imagine it's kind of nobody planned for that, nobody asked for that. Then distributors, okay, no cinema, theaters, no distribution. All of a sudden, in the middle of this drama, you have to rethink your model, but it doesn't happen that quickly. You don't know how to deal, and actually, yeah, okay, the streamers were there, but it's something totally different when we talk about distribution. All the campaigns that you have paid before, they were cancelled. You cannot just restart the campaign half a year later, 1 year later. It just doesn't work like that. So it led to the less risk-taking. So for the distributors, of course, they cannot take titles which they don't have the guarantee that will bring them the revenues. And it's a huge problem because, I mean, that's why we are here in Cannes. We watch all these films and some of them are more risky. And of course, we want to bring them to the audience, but you have to be sure that you can pay the bill. So another very serious issue. And then the cinema theaters. The cinema theaters were totally closed, and it was, in the same time, totally unpredictable. When they gonna open, how to plan the opening. Okay, we open now, no, in a month we close again. And in most of the countries in Europe, there were not really support schemes to help the cinemas, distributors also, and producers also. Like, I'm coming from Bulgaria. I have to tell you, there was nothing about cinema industry particular. Why cinema industry particular? Because of these very specifics that it has. And again, all the part of the chain which are absolutely interconnected. Basically, yes, not by chance cinema is considered as a cultural exception. So here we are, at the end of all this process. Oh, sorry, missed the sales agents. I'm sorry, but I'm not a sales agent, but still kind of as a distributor and festival, we are working all the time. So what were they supposed to do? Again, they cannot sell to the distributors. They cannot sell to the festivals because the festivals are not happening in most of the times. Or even if they're happening online, which is not a festival, let's not forget that. Festivals are about real happenings in the cinema theaters where the audience can meet the filmmakers, can talk, can exchange, and can lead to other projects, ideas. It's about the exchange, again, social and emotional experience, which the cinema theater, that I'm calling them the temples of the cinema. After all, every director, when starts planning the movie, kind of, and in the concept they have, this is to be screened on a big screen. I mean, nobody can convince me that The Great Beauty by Sorrentino is the same film on the small screen than on a big screen. And being at the end of this pandemic, going back, facing what results we have in the moment, we have to come with some adequate mechanisms, adequate policies, which can serve the whole Europe. Again, as I was saying, in some countries I know that there was quite good support scheme, like Germany, like France, but some other countries, like Bulgaria, we didn't have anything like that. And festivals, of course, sorry, the heads were messed a bit. But the festivals are also quite an important thing because in most of the cases, festivals are serving like alternative distribution. Most of the times, most of the titles that the festivals are screening will never enter particular country, will never enter to the cinemas. So festivals are very, very important, kind of not only educational, that they're showing things that otherwise you won't be able to see, but bringing the people and creating this creative ambience and environment. And now, in the beginning, in the middle, okay, we're already in the middle of the 2022, what we have? We have much lower box office, although it grew in 2021 by 38%. Still, the audience has changed attitudes. It's not that easy. It's a psychological mechanism. I mean, I know that it will be too much, but I'm a psychologist by education. That's why I kind of go into deep of this problem, but it's really there. The audience needs safety. It doesn't happen just like that. In the same time, it's a very, very deep need in the audiences to emotionally share the art of film, because this is how it works. That's the archetypal moment of this art, when we are all into the dark room. Not by chance, if you're watching a football game, for example, it's very, very obvious. Look at the fan of the football games. It's exactly how it works. It's contagious. Emotions are contagious. And then it's also very contagious when somebody is laughing in the hall. I mean, you don't want to watch a comedy only by yourself. So that was the brief picture of what happened in the past years. And again, how we go out of it. Maybe it's a good challenge, because in the same time, talking about my experience in our cinema in Sofia, Cinema House, I can see the people. We just had the festival in March, and I can see the audience kind of talking and exchanging. People want to come back. In most of the cases, they want to be back in normal life and kind of to really. I think they're very, very thirsty for it. Kind of, they're really curious. But what we do so we can absolutely guarantee stability in this sector. What will be, again, the key word here, the interconnection. Not a single element of the chain can exist by itself. And how we bring people in the cinema back, it's absolutely a problem for the sales, for the distributors, for the producers, for the filmmakers, and for the cinema exhibitors. All we are in the same boat. All we have to look for solutions together.
Thank you so much, Mira. I think that's given us enough to think about for a week. But it's really a great scene setter. Thank you so much. We're now going to go on to our first panel. And this is going to be, as you know, about reestablishing a creatively and economically sustainable film sector in Europe. And as you mentioned, you know, this could be seen as a time of crisis, but rebuilding can be very exciting. So I'm sure we're going to talk about some solutions. And I love that so often at events, we have sort of one sector. And here I'm so impressed we're going to have people from across the value chain. And I think that's so important to talk about collaboration. So I'd like to welcome up some of our next panelists. Let's go ahead and ask Susan Wendt, Managing Director of Trust Nordisk, the sales powerhouse in Denmark. Alexander Doomreicher Ivankanu, who is a film producer. You'll know him as the co-founder of Amorfu. Austria and Luxembourg, the company operates. Eduardo Escudero, who is business manager at Acontra Corriente, the great distribution company in Spain, and I understand you also have 4 cinemas. Is that right? Yes, and a SVOD is too. And we are also thrilled to welcome Jaime Terrazon, who is CEO of Cines Filmex Gran Via and co-founder of AKEC, also from Spain. So, yes, we all need to be interconnected, so I'm glad you're all here. I would like to almost like what Mira did in the overview, but drill it down to your own world, your business, your country. What does your business look like right now after these tumultuous past 2 years? What are the challenges you're facing right now? Have you learned some things? Susan, I'm sure you've learned some things.
We never learn. No, I mean, it's been 2 crazy years, I think, for all of us around, and it's almost not understandable. It's surreal to be back, which is really, really fantastic, but I think we've all managed somehow to get through. We had to think differently. Zoom meetings are not the same as meeting each other in person, face-to-face, interacting, hearing people talking with other people and all of that. So, I mean, first of all, discipline, I think, has been like a very important word throughout the pandemics in order to try to get out on the other side in the best way possible. That means to keep the contact with the distributors and everyone online on Zoom. That really needs some discipline, and also to follow up afterwards, because it's not as natural as it is when we're around here. Then we've spent a lot of time also looking a bit inside, not only on the upcoming films, but also actually spending time to see what about our backlog catalog? What can we do there? Is there some new stuff we can do? And trying to figure out, together with distributors for films that have already been bought, how can we help them to exist, to be a success also during the pandemic, or do we need to postpone them? So there's a lot of things that have to be done, and I mean, I can't say how great it is to be back, and almost forgot the stress of it at the same time.
And what about just actually buying and selling? What are you seeing people buying cautiously? Are they jumping all in because they're really excited to be back? Or what's the sort of market mood like here in Cannes?
I mean, here, I must admit, it feels like we're all back. I had this kind of expression, which is maybe a bit strange, but when the cows are set out after a winter in the barn and they're set out into the fields, so everybody is totally happy and excited. And I also think the feeling is that it's also an excitement to start buying again. This, having said that, it's not just like everything is great, because what we need to know and see as well is obviously some films are the ones that everyone wants in, and then we still have a lot of films that fall in between chairs, and even more now after the pandemics, because there's a build-up of smaller, really fantastic films. As we talked about before, or was mentioned before, online festivals are not the same as festivals for real, so the films don't get the same attention and awareness, which makes it help to sell them afterwards. So there's a lot of things to be done and to figure out on that side as well.
Okay, I'm going to come back to some of that when we talk about audiences. Alexander, I would love to come to you. As a producer, how have you survived the past 2.5 years, and what do things look like right now?
Yeah, first I also want to say that it's really great to be back here in Cannes, and it's really great to meet people and to be able to discuss the issues physically. That's a big relief for me. I think we have a quite paradoxical situation. In Austria, we could see, on the one hand, of course, a full stop of production in March 2020, thanks to the comeback fund that took over the role of the insurance companies. We could restart production in June. So we have, in Austria, we have seen even a boost of productions. Yes, we have even seen the creation of companies in the last 12 months, which was a big surprise to us. We represent the film and music sector. It was like 5,500 companies, from sound studios to production companies in our association. And we now have 6,000 members, because in the last maybe 18 months, there were hundreds of companies created, which was a big surprise to us. We do not really understand the reasons yet, but we can see that the pandemic reshuffled the system, and we have a lot of challenges, but it also gave, it seems, some opportunities to some companies that started to work in this complicated field. Certainly also thanks to this comeback fund that really made it possible for producers in Austria to produce. So if you ask me one challenge for production, and I'm not talking about financing and distribution because those are the two other topics, it's really important that this insurance issue is solved on a European level. At the moment, I have the impression that there are many different...
It's too separate.
It's too separate. Every country has different funds, and some countries can move on and have quite a good system, like Austria or also Luxembourg. Others, especially I believe in the east and the south of Europe, have nearly no possibilities to insure their production. So I believe that if we want to make sure that production can work on, we need to find a solution for that. And the best would be to have a European solution, because I don't know if the insurance companies will ever come back with COVID security and risk coverage.
I love that we've already got one solution, one idea to try to change on stage. I like it. You mentioned that, if production is booming in Austria or really healthy, is there any issue?
I didn't say it's really healthy. I said there are companies being created in a very complicated
it's
situation.
Complicated times.
Yeah.
I know in the UK it's really complicated right now to get shooting space, to get the right crews. Is crew shortage an issue there?
That's the other paradox. On the one hand, you have productions who were stopped, and on the other hand, you have more productions because of streamers moving in than you had before. So it's not, for me, it's not a linear situation. It's the wave came, shocked and shuffled everything, and now we are swimming in this new world, and I think we have to look at each and any problem and challenge and also possibility and find the good ways to work with it. And I would say if you ask me on like strategy or goals, I believe the most important goal, and that's for production and distribution, is that we can ensure independent production and distribution, that we in Europe are in control of the rights, of the possibilities to tell our stories. And I think Cannes is a wonderful example for that. I managed to see 3 films within all the meetings I had, which was great. The Italian opening film of the Quinzaine, and then Corsage by Marie Kreutzer, Austrian, Luxembourgish, German film, and the new film by Emily Artef. And all the 3 films tell very strong human and European stories, and I think that we should really do everything to be, as producers, but also as society, in control of that, so that Europe can tell these stories and can also bring the stories to the people.
Okay, I totally agree. We might come back to talk about how we make sure we do all that. I think it'd be great to come to Eduardo to talk about mostly distribution. I know you also have, we said, some cinemas and SVOD, but how are things looking in Spain right now? What do you see the sort of challenges or the lessons you've learned in the past 2.5 years?
Hello, everybody. Thank you to the organizers of this event. Well, the moment in Spain, like in other countries, is challenging. We are a 50% average below what we had before the pandemic. But before the pandemic, and we continue to having a pandemic, even if we try to forget about it. But for the adult-oriented films, independent European films, mostly of them, so we are 70% below of what we had before. So obviously the situation is not good regarding theaters. And this is not a discussion about streamers or theaters, because the answer is both, of course. We need to work with both, and as as we always did as distributors, because our job is to reach the audience wherever they are, even if they are if we can bring to the theaters, perfect. If not, we can find the people in the sofa at home or even in a tablet, even if it's not the best experience, but if they want to consume in a tablet, let's go to the tablet. The important is to find the consumer. No? So the discussion is not if we stream or theaters. I need to say today that it's dramatic, the situation with the theaters, because we need theaters, particularly the independent European production needs cinemas. It's not a question of romanticism, it's because we need to maintain the jobs on the cinemas or the cinema distributors open. No, it's not just that. It's a real business necessity. In the video on demand platforms, the global video on demand platforms acquire films in a cherry picking basis, particularly independent films. And the local or European platforms, independent OTTs, are a nice complement for the business model, but not enough. So we need to work together to try very hard to bring back the people to the cinemas, because it's essential for the European production, I think. And obviously we are open to all new tools to work in all the with all type of clients. Our philosophy is to have our films in as much outlets as we can, and we do that, and we are happy. We are a successful company selling to all global and local platforms, but even that, we need cinemas back. So.
Yeah.
Can I fully support you in that?
Yes. Yes, for those watching at home, that got a big round of applause. We love cinemas here. We're in Cannes. Jaime, I would love to talk to you as an exhibitor and how you're finding the business. Is it starting to bounce back? What are your challenges right now?
Yes, I agree with my previous speakers that it's good to be back, but I would like to bring I'm an optimistic person, so I think we should be more ambitious. 2 years ago, all media was saying that cinemas were dead. That was not true. Cinemas were closed, and obviously if you're closed, you can do no business. And now we look back and saying how long it's going to take us to get to 2019 levels, which, as Mir explained, was a good year for the industry. So what I think that we should have now in this moment is try for a second, forget about 2 years that were awful years of COVID, and go back to 2019 and think what we would be thinking at that time towards 2020. So we have to be more ambitious than not just getting back to 2019 levels, no? And obviously that is difficult to say it now because we are not still recovered. We are going to recover. That recovery might take still 1 year or more, but our ambition has to be to try to reach to more ambitious goals that we could have set back in 2019. No? As for the cinemas in Spain or throughout Europe, because I can also speak about different territories in Europe, we are recovering, but as Eduardo said, it's tough. It's tough. It's taking time, and it is very important that all the investment is done in the whole cinema ecosystem. It's not just investing in cinemas, not just helping production, distribution. We need that all the ecosystem gets back in full shape so that we can further develop.
I like a lot of those words you just said there, including the ecosystem, and investment is also good. But while you were speaking, I was thinking there was a word or a phrase up on Mira's slides about the uncertainty of audience preferences post-pandemic. And I wonder, Jaime, can I just stay with you to ask about, you want to see things booming more than they were in 2019. Any ideas, some ways, how to get that audience back into the cinema, and maybe new audience too?
Well, audiences have the basic thing that attracts audiences is powerful content. What we need is good films. But that was the same thing that we needed back in 2019. So, but to have all those movies available, we need that the full value chain works in that sense, that they are produced, that they are distributed, and they reach the audiences. But as long as we get that powerful content, people will come back. There's been a lot of studies and researches done throughout these past years, saying what type of audiences is returning to the cinema, what type of audience is not returning. Obviously, it is difficult to say to give an answer that fits all, because in different countries circumstances have been different. No, obviously at the beginning of the pandemic, in some countries that had cinemas open, because in other European countries cinemas were closed for large periods, which was not the case in Spain, that we reopened. Were on the early post-COVID times we opened. Comedies were what people were looking for, but it's obvious that you've been locked down for 3 months. What you want is to have fun, not to worry about other problems, no? But I wouldn't reach a conclusion and say, no, now it's comedies. No, you need all type of movies, and I think that the diversity, and maybe we should not elaborate on that because there's another panel coming up, but that's a key thing. But this is also an issue that we were discussing back in 2019. Yeah. So this is very important, no?
Eduardo, how are you thinking about what audiences want to see and what they want to see on a big screen versus what they might want to see on SVOD? How have you noticed your audience change? Are you buying different things now?
Well, it's difficult to answer. If I will know, perhaps I won't be here. I will be in Hollywood with a big contract or something. No. Really, I don't know. I think that this pandemic and the way that people is consuming some content perhaps has left less room for some kind of genre in the cinemas. No, perhaps thrillers or action movies. I don't know. I'm not. Except they are big events, can be tough to defend on the theater. Hopefully not. No? But I cannot have an only answer. I think if the film is good, as Jaime says, we can have a chance. No, but again, I think that when I talked before about the streaming and the both are important. I would like to reinforce one idea that what did I say? It's important to also to have the people in cinemas, or the cinemas are performing well or trying to increase the level of attendance that we have now, because it's the only way to create a brand around the films. The films, unfortunately, we have tried hard during the lockdown to create brands, investing money in premium video on demand films, and was not that cost effective. Unfortunately, video killed the radio star, and subscription killed the possibilities of transactional video on demand. And so the most cost-effective way, in fact, the European Audiovisual Observatory told us a couple of days ago that there is a correlation between what is performing better in video on demand is those films that are released on theaters. So even for that sustainability of business model, but also to create a brand around the European talent. We need to do our best to return to the people, to the cinemas. And again, it's nothing against the streamers. We have created our own subscription video on demand service. We have 2 at VOD fast channels dedicated to theatrical. So we are adapting to the new life and to new normality. But again, this is important, no? To maintain, and it's a key role not only cinemas for that, also Europe. Independent distributors are essential to maintain that diversity that we look in Europe.
Susan, can you come in on that?
Yes,
too?
I have a little kind of a different approach. Not that I totally agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, I think the first step we need to take is to make people dare to go to the cinemas again. So I think, I mean, one thing is, of course, we need great content in the cinemas, but at the same time, there are many, especially the older audience, that in many countries are the ones who go a lot, are the regulars to go to the cinemas. And I don't know how to do that. I was thinking in a very basic way to have some kind of advertisements around in newspapers, on TV, or whatsoever, which is something that all in the value chain need to work together with, also with an official stamp somehow by the government.
Sort of a safety message too.
Exactly, exactly. So having that, and then maybe also trying to, through social media and stuff like that, to remind people again of what it is to be in the cinema, of this kind of, that it's not just watching a movie there, but it's really the social event in it as well. So I think we have several steps. Of course, the films are really important, and I think we have those films on the European market, but you know, it's a combination still as well of showing people it's actually secure to go. I mean, let's face it, remembering myself taking public transport after the masks were gone, it takes some time before you actually feel secure in doing that. So I think it's really, something can be based on small statistics, but we can't wait for statistics in general. But I think that's one of the approaches to get minimum to the level where we were. That could be one of the things to do.
Jaime.
Yeah, if you allow me to give a broader view on that, it is very common nowadays to say that elderly people don't go that often. That's actually, I'm not going to say it's not true, but let's give it a wider approach. What it actually happens is that regular cinema goers have returned to the cinemas, because going to the cinema was for them a something that they did usually every month, every week, every 2 months, and they have returned to the cinema. What we are missing is a large chunk of the population that did not go that often to the cinema.
So maybe they would go twice a year or something.
Yeah, that's right.
And they're not going at all.
And they are not going out, no, because they haven't recouped that habit to go to the cinema. But it's not that they are not willing to go there. And then I agree with Susan that there has to be campaigns. In Spain, we've run some of them, and also with the support of the government. But basically, the driver, let's not forget it, is a good movie. You have a good movie, and these audiences will come back. No? But again, as I said before, it's not the same circumstances in all cinemas, in all countries around Europe, but measures have not been removed totally, partially, and there's still a lot of confusion, but not for going to the cinema, but even for going any close
Going anywhere,
space.
yes,
Yeah?
so more clear messaging. But, you know, I also think we did see people come out for James Bond, for Spider-Man. How do we get them to come out for Triangle of Sadness, for Holy Spider, for, you know, not maybe those quite films yet, but how do we get them to come out for a great European film? Any ideas? I don't have the answer to this. Alexander,
we
how
need
do
the
we do it?
festivals back,
Okay.
and that's one important point. What we are doing here, what Cannes is doing, is just amazing, because it's the big fête du cinéma, and I think we
And it's
need
on the front page of
cinema.
every newspaper in
Yeah,
the world.
we need cinema
Maybe
back
the dresses.
in
but-
the
yeah.
industry. I mean, on the front pages, on television. We need the actors, the actresses, the directors, the writers. We need ourselves. It needs to be part of public, of social life again. I think that's what it is. I mean, cinema was part of our life, and has to be part of our life. And if I say our, a big part of the population's life. So I believe. I mean, I have the water here, so if we are here on a boat and the water is there, because what you don't see is that we have the screen here as well, so I look into the water all the time. But we are in the same boat, and if I say we, it's the producers, it's the sales companies, it's the distributors, the theaters, the audience, which means society, the media, but also the streamers. And if we lose the cinemas, and therefore I wanted to applaud you for what you said. I mean, we need the cinemas, are our main first target and the possibility to tell the stories and to reach an audience, not only in the cinemas itself, but also in the media. And festivals will play a very important role in the next 12 months, because here is the platform where stories can be seen, but also can be spread.
Eduardo, what would you say about how to get people, Spanish audiences who just love good films, not James Bond, but something else? How difficult is it to cut through the noise of life to get to them?
Yes, aside official campaigns or big campaigns of selling safety, that is important. I think that you mentioned, and Ira mentioned also, that we are in the same boat. We should be in the same boat, but sometimes I have the feeling that we are in the same sea or same area of the sea, but not in the same boat. Sometimes I don't know how to say abarvolar in English, but to put our boats close, but not always we are in the same boat. So well, and we need really collaboration. Despite that, obviously, during the last years, it has been a big change, because for example, this event is a proof. No? There are collaboration, different organizations, and for example, from Europa Distribution, we have many meetings with Europa International, something that didn't happen in the past, with Europa Cinemas, that always we collaborate with them, and it's great. But beyond that, you need really cooperation and collaboration. And regarding, and for that, what we need is not to have weak stakeholders. And in this moment, the pandemic has left all the companies very weak, and obviously weakness gives you the obligation to take short-term decisions, and this is bad. And for example, and I'm saying that because the other day when Doctor Strange was released in Spain, one cinema of 10 screens gave 27 showtimes to Doctor Strange. And I need to recognize that, considering the situation we have in Spain and in all other countries, even the 24th show venue of Doctor Strange was better for the cinema than the one independent. So I'm not complaining about the cinema, but obviously the need of money, the need to survive, put you in these circumstances. And obviously that strategy is like to shoot in your own feet, because at the end, obviously, we need to bring back the people to the cinemas. Collaboration, but real collaboration with cinemas, in particular. As I'm defending, I'm not suspicious. I make an allegation in favor of the cinemas, but we need more also from the cinemas. Even, obviously, again, with a very weak financial situation, it's difficult to think more beyond salaries and to pay the rental each month. But for that reason, we need money from authorities in order that we can make some strategic plan. But if not, it will be complicated.
So yeah, what kind of investment would help? Is this from a Spanish government? Is that from Creative Europe? What would you like to see that investment that could really help?
All monies are welcome. Anything is welcome. No, but not only, it's not only a question of money. Of course, it's always important, the money. But you can do many things that, obviously the money can be not only to give money to distributors or to exhibitors. Why not to subsidize the audience, the ticket? Why not to subsidize the audience for some films? Why not to incentive the people goes to one film instead to another? Why not the public broadcasters, at least not in Spain, and I think in many countries, are not using a fraction of the space to promote theaters, but cinema, but also ballets, operas, and whatever, but also to promote the return of the people to the cinemas. But not only the films that they produce, because this happens in Spain. Mediaset Spain announced only the films they have. Televisión Española, only the films they it's not bad, but I think we should be more generous. No? Obviously, well, there are plenty of measures that we can request. No?
Susan?
Yeah, just a few comments, because again, I think it's really important, as you said as well, that there's a cooperation between everyone in the value chain. And I was thinking one of the things that we're missing, and which has started to become stronger and stronger, is to try to find a way to make the cinemas, this event, something special, where we need engagement all the way through, meaning that from the producer's side, have, make sure that cast, director are available, not only, to go to specific cinemas, because of course that's not possible if a film is out in several countries, but it could be to think of some small greetings, making a small greeting for like a specific cinema, a specific city, country that can be shown in the theaters. Using social media, having better social media campaigns throughout. We as sales agents have to be helpful with that as well, speaking with the producers along the way to try to have material for that, and sharing these strategies, which we already do in many times with distributors, and it needs to go all the way further to the cinemas as well, so that we know what is needed in the different change, and also being really aware of trying to reach the audience where they are, using social media a bit more, finding maybe in the local territories influencers that can post about the different films, which goes into the right direction. So I think the advertisement in a more smart way, but where we need to create from the production and sales side a package that can be used to do that. And again, it's also a question of communication, what is needed, and it might not be the same needed in every country.
Alexander, when you hear ideas like that, are you thinking, yes, these are greater ways to get production involved throughout the chain?
Yes, absolutely, but I also think of how can we make sure that the stories we want to see in Europe can be told. And I think there are issues, and discussing in the last days here in Cannes in the different Assemblée Générale, it's very much linked. The question of territoriality, the question of TV, of cinema windows. I think that's a very important issue, that there is time once the films have been presented, enough time to show them in the cinemas before other ways of seeing the films come in. We also have to make sure that there is a window also for the streamers before the broadcasters come, because otherwise we will have the problem that the minimum guarantees from the distributors will not be sufficient anymore to finance the films we are producing. So I believe that at the moment we really have to make sure that independent producing and distributing remains possible, or is even strengthened in Europe, after the crisis or because of the crisis or during the crisis. And this is policy making. And I think this needs Europe because we have so many, I mean, and that's very interesting, that's the French media chronology. We had a meeting today in the morning, and it's this compromise that what was found in January. It's very complex.
Yes.
And if you have a chain like Arte on board, which is in Germany and France, you will find out that this is not corresponding to the German rules. So that suddenly you have a binational TV broadcaster that is paradoxical in itself, and it shows that we have countries like France who find maybe better solutions than other because they are stronger. The same is for the participation of the streamers in the funding of our films, and why not maybe also in the distributing of our films and exploiting our films. It goes from zero levy or obligation in a country like mine, unfortunately Austria, up to 26 in France. So you have, or now Denmark, I believe, is going for 6%. And we need this. We need policy making not only in every single country, but on the European level, thinking of how can we produce and distribute and bring the films we make to the people. And that's a huge challenge. So, and that's politics. We need to work with our governments in our countries, but also on the European level.
Jaime, I would love to come to you about how you see if there can be improved collaboration with production, with distribution, from where exhibition sits, or, you know, do you like these social media ideas that Susan has, or how do you think the whole chain can work better together?
Well, there are already things happening in Spain at that level, and there are a few initiatives that have already worked in that direction, but they are still in the early stages, and I think we can improve on that. She was hopefully right in the sense that we have to, and now we have the means and the technology to reach out to audiences and bring in talent for premieres, for presenting movies that are broadcast in cinemas. So you can go at any cinema in Spain and you have access to the cast and there is a presentation. Some of these things are already happening, and just the beginning. I think we can improve on that. Even Contracorriente has made some attempts in that sense, and I think it's the right direction. No? Allowing people to get more access to these presentations of the movies, raising the interest for the awareness of that movie. No?
And Susan, how do you respond to Alexander's idea of just more pan-European support legislation? Is that a forward-thinking solution that you think is possible?
I mean, I think it's hard to get it through because it's different. I mean, country by country, every country has their own rules, and in many countries, it's not by law, but it's like, you know, by tradition, by the industry, that these are the unofficial laws to be abided on. And I think it's important that we keep the territoriality and that we have the borders. Also, as I said before, people are not the same in Spain and in Germany, and so that's really important also in order to make the film work individually in the different countries. I think, you know, to put in laws can also be complicated. I think there needs to be some kind of flexibility because there's certain films that need the windows, but there are also films that can actually benefit from only having maybe a 2 weeks theatrical or a month break in between theatrical and digital, where it's more promotional wise. So it's hard to say we need strictly to go by that. I think it's like for so many other things, every film is different. It's not just a project. It's not just like, you know, a stool, a chair, or a sofa. It's a film, and every film needs to be treated differently in the same way that you treat it differently when you produce it, like we do when we sell it, and you do when you make the distribution in your country. But there needs to be some kind of guidelines for sure.
I know we're running a little late on this panel, but I wanted to see if there's anybody in the audience. I see some good experts out there. Would you like to try to shout out your question and I'll repeat it? Oh no. Oh, look. It's like Phil Donahue. I love it. Alexander.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Action.
So I'm coming back to. So, okay, I have. You remember when the DVDs came out, like the first DVDs, and they had to find a way to make it interesting. So they had the making of. They added the making of, like a little
Director's
section. Right. The
commentary.
comment. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. In my view, cinema and the experience of the big screen is almost sacred. I'm a filmmaker myself, and I love the experience of a great big screen, and that's one thing. But I think coming back to, I don't think we should sell the ticket cheaper. It's on the contrary. We should make it an experience where it's special to go to the movies. And all this time I was thinking, sure, and I was thinking, there was maybe pairing it with, give the audience what they cannot get if they watch the movie on Netflix. So, and the community experience.
Maybe that's a live Q&A or a recorded Q&A.
For example,
or something.
yeah, for example, at TIFF, I remember once, not during the festival, but they have these monthly event where, for example, there was a film called Angels Share.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and so they screened the movie, and they had a woman who was a world expert on whiskey.
Yeah.
And she talked about whiskey. It was fantastic. And you pay a little bit more for the movie, but you get an education, you all share. And then afterwards, we talked, the audience is walking away talking about whiskey and movies and all kinds of stuff. So sort of that's just, it's not really a question, but.
Yeah. Do you think we need to eventize cinema more? Or is there a danger that if you can't just go on a Tuesday afternoon and enjoy a film, you need a whiskey tasting? How would you feel about the balance of that?
We are already doing things like that, and obviously the more that you make the cinematic experience an event, the better, no? Then how you can manage to do it for just one occasion or nationwide is something that depends. But again, we have new technologies available, not new, but available now that can benefit from that and can be useful tools, absolutely.
And it's also.
We're talking about innovation. That is a way of innovation, no?
Good. But obviously it can't be for every film because, that's firstly not possible at all. And it's like finding the balance. So I think finding the balance in between doing that as special events, but you also have people and in that need to have something more curated. So curation is also a very important thing, where in Denmark, for instance, we have the Cinema Club, which chooses 5-7 films a year. And it's a group of people from different sides of the industry together voting for different films, some local films and also some films that are international. And if people are member of the Cinema Club, they will go to the cinema for these specific films for half the price. They pay a membership, and you see in the statistics, you actually see that they go to most of the films that have been curated for them. Plus, they see advertisement for other films, which makes them go and see another film later on.
Very successful.
It's very successful, but has been there for 25 years, I guess, something like that.
Yeah, but
you need
why
to build
isn't it
on that, but it's a good example. It's a very good example.
We can learn from each other, maybe.
Yes, there we go. Good examples. Why don't we take one more quick audience question for this panel before we move on to the next, if there is one? Look at all these experts here. I know you've got... Okay, we're going to move to the next one. Oh,
But can I?
Mira might have a question or a comment.
The comment for the events is absolutely here. I've been doing experiments with events all the time, considering disco from the 70s, dress code and things, but it's absolutely consuming. You need a lot of people in the team to focus. But let's also mention maybe the educational system, because cinema is the language. And not to be behind the times. It has to be introduced in the schools because, as you know the language, you can read the books. If you don't know the language, you don't read the books. And as we live in an audiovisual world, when everything is audiovisual, kind of the basic of the audiovisual was film. I absolutely see it as a necessity. I don't know your take on it, but it's very important for the
Yes.
audience of tomorrow.
Yeah. Education.
I think
Let's
that
do it.
being in France, I believe that it's really wonderful what exists here. This catalog of 100 films that is revised, I believe, every year. You might know better. The films that you see if you go to school in France, and if you finish school here at the age of, I believe, 19, you have seen 100 films, and of course, of course, French cinema, but also world cinema. And I believe this is kind of a formation that is simply great. We don't have this in Austria. We were fighting for that. And that leads me to what you said earlier, and I really love it. You're totally right. Every film is different. What we are doing here is we do it for the love of the films and of the stories and of the people and in the films or for documentaries. And I believe this is also kind of why we do this, for me at least. So yes, we need rules. We need rules that are flexible, that's true. And we need to find, and answering to the question if every film can be an event movie, no. There are some films, not only big event movies, but especially documentaries or other films with topics that can work, or with directors or actors attached where it works. And so we need both, I believe. We need the cinemas to be centers of events again, but in a way that it becomes normal again. Just a normal thing of our
A
life.
normal, everyday part of life.
Yeah,
The cinema.
and we need
Yes.
events to come to this, and they will also remain as it was before, but we need both this regularity and the special screenings.
And I mean, just quickly on the educational side, it's really, really important because that's a new audience, and if we don't get them to the cinemas during their school time, they will never get there. So it should be on the diary for school. I mean, several times a year from first grade, I would say.
I want to go to school in France, be reborn into France and see those 100 films. I want to thank you so much. That was really fascinating to hear your very honest opinions. And, as Mira said, yeah, we could look at some of this as a crisis, but I think you've all given us some ideas of some ways to move forward, some ideas, some new ways to learn. So I really thank you. I know you might be late to go sell a film. Go sell a film. Thank you so much. So, but everybody else stay in your seats. Oh, unless you're coming on stage. But our audience, please stay in your seats because we've got a second part. And I think this is going to flow really nicely into this second part. Is going to be more about, we've called it For the Many, Not the Few. And it's about looking at why choice and variety is so crucial to European cinema, to the heritage, to the future, and how we can keep this sort of variety and choice alive. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So we have Jeremy Kessler, Deputy Director of Legal and European Affairs at the CNC in France, obviously. Welcome. Anders Kierhauge. Oh, I try my best Danish. CEO of Zemtropa, the amazing production company in Denmark. Jean-Christophe Simon, CEO of Film Boutique from France, the great international sales company. And Hanna Lahunen, CEO and head of acquisitions at Cinemats in Finland. And she's also head of distribution at Aurora Studios. Thank you so much. Sorry, you've got an American trying to pronounce your names, but I try. But yeah, I think this section of the event today, we're really looking at, what makes Europe great is that it's very different. There's not one kind of European film. There's not one kind of European company. There's not one European language. There's, this is what makes us all great. And how do we protect that? Goodness. So, yeah, I guess let's start looking at, we've seen different models emerging, we've seen consolidation. How do we protect, as Alexander was saying, some of those independent voices? How do we protect some of the independence and, the sort of mosaic of Europe, that it doesn't just look like one color block? Who wants to go first with that one? It's a big question. Anders, why don't you say a little? I think it should be on, I hope.
Hello.
There
Yes.
we go.
I like the whiskey part on each film. I think that's something. But the question, I think it's so important to be true to your DNA, because there's a variety of production companies in Europe that has been here for a long time. So I think at least this is our main focus at Zentropa, is to be true to our DNA, which from the beginning was author-driven creative process. And we do films in all its formats, but being able to protect the DNA, I think that gives a fantastic possibility to have the variety and the diverse storytelling, instead of being controlled from above.
Above or afar.
Yeah.
How, sometimes though, I think having your own DNA doesn't pay the bills. You might have a really unique voice, and let's say some huge company wants to pay you to have a slightly different voice, but it means you can keep your staff and keep the lights on in the cinemas and the studio. And how do you juggle taking risks and having that original DNA with what the market is pushing for?
Basically, the way we've been doing it from the start, I try to see finance as a kind of three-legged chair, that we have the investment that we do as a producer, co-producers. We have the market, the pre-sales, the MGs, and we have the national, regional institutes, funds, tax schemes. And what we've been doing, and of course trying to fine-tune during the years, is in order to pay the bills, it is to make this, I call it a puzzle. It's a puzzle to do the finance. And you have to be tailor-made in terms of the creative process, the finance, the business plan. So it's a very subtle ecosystem of pieces of puzzle. And this is what we've tried to fine-tune in order to optimize, because it's a balance. It is a balance between that we are the mediator between a lot of interests, conflicts. We are trying to be the balance, in fact, between a very sensitive, creative voice and the brutal reality of finance. But when we do it best, it actually also pays off. But we have to invest also in films that never make it commercially, but make it creatively.
But you make enough that work commercially, you can still do the ones that
Yes.
don't work
And it
commercially.
tends to, if we're also open-minded and open the doors, at least most of the time, it tends to balance. That there is something that we lose money on, but which is important, and there are some stuff that we earn money. And if we can just make it zero, it's a great.
That can
But
be a
that's-
success in some cases. Hannah,
I can take it from there, because I believe this is also has to do with what kind of players we are in terms of diversity. Like I, for instance, used to be a one-woman band, a distributor as a one-woman band for almost 8 years, and that gave me a certain position to be able to buy slightly, perhaps less commercial films, perhaps a little bit trickier or more challenging, as we would call them, because I have a very different overhead model. And that's why when we have the smaller players and we have the bigger players, I think back in the day it would be the math that if I do 6,000 tickets in Finland, that's already going to pay the bills. But it also can have a greater upside, of course. But absolutely, you're right. It's hard to say, just let's nourish the talent and let's try to keep the DNA and not alter it too much, but still make the audience come.
Yeah,
But
but
it's
still pay your employees and keep the sector alive.
But I also believe, because I believe most of us who work in the field have had that passion for film for forever. Like, I grew up with cinema, and I think I'm a different person because of the films that I've seen my whole life. It does have to do with education as well, because if we get the people in the sensitive age, or teenagers and youngsters, if we get them to see, for example, art house films and European films when they're growing up and going to school, they're going to do it for their whole lives, most probably. But it's very hard if they've never seen a film like that when they're 35 to make them, like, now's the time, now come.
Jean-Christophe, do you worry about, I mean, we think of France, we're in this magical land of cinema. Do you worry that culture is changing at all, that kids are watching TikTok instead of Bresson? You know.
I have to confess that for me, we started this conversation saying that we needed to protect diversity, and I have a very totally different vision, because I think we are not protecting it. We have to market it, and actually, like the wish of people to see diverse, I will use the word content, which is not what I like. I like films, but still, it's what we are living in. I think we are watching films of very different type, as probably never ever in, let's say, film history. So when you are talking about diversity, I think the question we are tackling now for film by female filmmakers, minorities, and so we are now much better than we have ever been. So the question is, how do we bring audiences to go to see this film, to attract them, to and as well the question about films: is film still as important as it was in the past? That's a serious issue, and the question of theatrical, of course. But so I'm much more positive in the way I see that. I think people want to see things, and we are working on that. We need to make the revolution sometime of the way we work. I mean, of course, we have a new environment, new economics. I think here we are all fighting for innovative films with sometimes not so easy contents, but somehow we have to balance it with what is very artistically interesting, what's working, and as well how we can make money with it. Just one very small remark. So my company, so it's in France, but in Germany, between two countries.
Yes.
I think all the foreign films for the Oscars this year were represented by European companies. So it's not like we are fighting. We are almost the leaders. We know that there is, of course, an American economics for films which is on top, but we are probably the second biggest market, and we are very strong. So, and that's working pretty well.
Hey, some good news. How do you see how European independence can complement or compete with some of these global brands?
Well,
are you working with any of them? Do you sell to Netflix and Amazon? Or
yes, of course we do. Well, actually, to be fully honest, we work with a lot of films which are pure art film for theatrical. But at the time, we sold Divine to Netflix, which was the first French film acquired by the platform, which was full of controversies. Personally, I think all the films are not made for all the different platforms. It's in a strange way, you can have a film which is perfect on Netflix to target specific audiences, and would have totally different people in other experience. If I take the experience of Divine, for example, which won the Camera d'Or 5 years ago, the problem we face with a film like Divine is some specific minorities do not go to see art films in the city center. And they would love this film if they see that somewhere else. So the question how we try to reach these audiences on different scale for us is a permanent question. And the answer, of course, as a sales company, we work in all the countries in the world, so the answer is different territory per territory. So unfortunately, I don't have just one good answer, but it's true that in some spaces, we had a film called On Body and Soul that won the Golden... Okay, so On Body and Soul, which was released in all the countries in Europe, won the Golden Bear in Berlin, Oscar nominated. It was going theatrical in all the countries in the world, and it was Netflix for North America. So the world is big, I would say.
Yeah. And we can all maybe work together somehow.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the idea to compete with the platforms, I'm not sure it's exactly the way we can do. It's we have to partner. Sometimes we are competitors for some films, but it's an environment.
And Jeremy, I think when we looked at the French cinema industry, obviously the CNC is the cornerstone of that. So I just wondered your thoughts on how do we protect the variety of French cinema that we've seen today? How do we even keep that expanding more? How do we make sure you're supporting the right kinds of new storytellers? What's the CNC's thoughts on that? Big job to represent.
Yes, thank you. First of all, the diversity, which is the key issue of this panel, has been at the core of European politics and French politics for years. I mean, it's what we've strengthened for at the European level for like 50 years. Diversity is an actual notion in the European law. It's quoted on the main treaty for the European Union as one of the objectives of the Union, and at the Article 167 of the other treaties, the Treaty about the functioning of the EU, diversity, cultural diversity is quoted as a very important notion which the European Union has to take into account in all its policies. And that means that when the European Union acts, it has to take into account the cultural diversity. I wanted to stress that, to say that it has been an objective of political, I wouldn't say fight, but in French, combat of political arguments for years. And we are just getting off a period in which we made very strong steps forward with the AVMS directive, which everybody knows here, or the copyright directive, because these are meant to protect the diversity, the cultural diversity. These are meant to make sure that audiovisual, which we are talking about, or cinema, are not into the standards markets logics. But starting from that, it's true that we have the conviction that we need to go still forward, to go further. And at the CNC, we have always believed that when you support the industry and when you support also some words that are not that bad as they sound, like consolidation of enterprises, structuration of the sector, you are making things happen. I mean, the diversity in the European law, it's based on the notion of biodiversity, actually. It functions in a way the same way. So I'm going to go back to the title of the conference, The Constant Gardeners, because its diversity in the European law is like a garden, but it's not a jardin à la française. It's not like a garden which is always perfect. It's an ever-flourishing garden, like a Japanese, or no, I don't know them as well, but like a British garden. And so you have to make them grow and to make very important trees grow so that you can have a whole range of enterprises able to make the new project that they are to make. And there is a last question I would like to, I mean, it's not a last question, obviously, but that I would like to tackle is the issue of the control of the enterprises. We are proud here to say, as you reminded, that European films are recognized all around the world, and especially at the Oscars or here at the Cannes Film Festival or other festivals in the world. But today, what we think in France is that and in Europe, is that we have to make sure that the European works the European enterprises, are still may keep European in the choices. I mean, the choices, the artistic choices that they can keep into the EU, so that we still have these European voices being heard.
all very important. Hannah, I wanted to come back to you because in addition to thinking of different kinds of storytellers or even racial or ethnic diversity or geographical, we also wanted to talk about the fact that there are varieties of companies. And I thought it was interesting to hear you were a one-woman show running a company, and now you're also working with Aurora Studios, which is a new company. And why, you know, in the big picture, why is it so important to have sort of smaller companies like that, sort of entrepreneurial, smaller companies that aren't 400-person operations? Why is it so important to have people like you and Aurora in this ecosystem?
I think what's at the core of Aurora's strategy and also ideology is that we want to be flexible so that the talents that we of course want to nourish and whose great work we want to bring to silver screen they can work with us more easily so that we can develop and co-develop, we can finance and co-finance, and we can distribute or we can also help them at all the stages of the film's life. And I think what's the best, because we acquired Helsinki Filmi, which is the biggest production company in Finland, and when we work with them from very early on, we get to actually talk about the script already before the shooting is even about to start, from the marketing point of view, from the distribution point of view, and that way, as I personally believe that as much dialogue that we can have as early as possible is going to help the film in so many ways, because then we take all angles into consideration from as early on as possible, and also the film's director and producer and screenwriter, all they will be heard when we think about how we're going to bring this film to the audience. Plus also we can do certain marketing tricks in the shooting that's hopefully going to be super interesting for the audience.
So yeah, to keep thinking about it across
so
early
we can
on.
start to build it into phenomena from day one instead of, okay, now we have the final film, what are we going to do? And I think that's also interesting to kind of go to the roots of how we start doing it and how the film crew feels about it, and also maybe start and give them a little bit more voice in marketing as well.
Jean-Christophe, I would love to ask where you see, because I think in times of pandemic, as we spoke about, maybe people sort of almost retreat or try to be safe. Do you think people are taking enough creative risks in the films you're seeing being produced and the films that buyers are buying?
I still think there are spaces for exceptions, and we are working with prototypes, so when something is amazing, people go for it. So I think the question is not really on distributors and exhibitors, because they are ready to take the risk with the right films. Of course, distributors and theaters were under a huge pressure during the different lockdown. You had a lot of films not released, and of course, when you keep a film on the cupboard for 2 years and you come 2 years after, it's much more difficult, of course. So, but I always had the feeling that all the people in the value chains were doing their duties during this period, even if we were all under pressure. There are different shifts. I think it's probably temporary, but it became very difficult right now for, let me call that, social films, because somehow we go back to the movies to be outside, to try to have great time. So it's not exactly the moment where you want to see very sad stories with strong political topics, probably. But I guess it's only for a certain time of period. We noticed, for example, in the last year, that it became very complicated to work with, I would call it urban dramas, because people wanted film where you are in gardens, you are outside, you have lights. I guess when we spent 2 years inside, that's what we needed, all of us. But I mean, still, it's I think distributors and theaters, and of course producers, because they are the essence of that, are still taking the risk. And actually, the selection of Cannes this year is a good example, because you have plenty of very different formal propositions, very interesting, and I guess they will find audiences. Question is the size and how long they will stay in the theaters or not. Probably.
Okay, we'll come back to audience. Anders, you talked at the beginning about that DNA, and Zentropa has its own DNA. But I'm wondering, how creatively risky can you be and you still find financing you need? Are there dream projects that you're trying to get off the ground at Zentropa that the market is not wanting to see or putting their money in yet?
There are always, when people do not put money in our films, they are to blame, but that it sometimes happen. But in generally speaking, no, I think that they are still open for if we come, especially because we're fighting for these projects. We believe in the author-driven projects, and my worry in some of the questions you also put in that that we don't copy big companies or big platforms and think that this is the European answer, because it's not. Because then you can make films where you have the very little level of common culture in Europe, but then you forget to dig deeper, which is my worry. I'm sure you can find an audience, but what we try to still fight for some national films with an international view, and when you're fighting, things can happen, because and another round we did, which won the Oscar, is a very good example, because not everyone, but the majority was very worried, basically saying, how can you make such a typical Danish film with a drinking culture, and you want to...
The Americans don't want to see this.
Yeah, that no one wants to see this, and if you put that film in an algorithm, they would just say, forget it, no money. But there was a fight from the writer-director, there was a fight from our producer, and there was a belief, and then there was the DNA that we kind of said, we will do this, even though it seems a bit crazy to do a film with 4 middle-aged white guys drinking too much. It's not a good pitch.
It was not a zeitgeist moment, but it
happened.
Worked. But it was a great film.
It's exactly, because that's the core business of it. Great films, and I think in Europe, maybe not always at a commercial level, but for me, this is also culture. This is not just, sometimes we talk about consumers, and I'm kind of, what? This is what you do if you go to buy food, but this is film, or...
It's an audience, not a consumer.
It's an audience. These are films, and you talked about education. Yes, very, very important, because we have to teach the young to be curious, to find out things that they might not understand in the first instance, but if they dig a little bit deeper, it gives them a totally new world. So this is what we fight for.
Good.
If I can just add a little thing on that, I mean, it's funny to ask Zentropa if they take risk, because I think it's a company who did the most in terms of...
Lars von Trier.
Lars von Trier is not supposed to be a market film in theory, but it's big. And it's, I think, all the international successes from, let's say, from the European perspective are mistakes. Another round is a mistake. But even if you think about Parasite should not work. It's a tiny Korean movie. And it's the same for all the films we are talking about. We had a film called Embrace of the Serpent some years ago, Oscar nominated. Nobody wanted to see a shaman black and white story in the rainforest, 2 hours 30. And still it works. So it's exactly because you have these mistakes and you need this specific voice, and people want to discover new things. I'm always saying the same small story. One of my partners wrote a book. He was on Amazon, and Amazon recommended him to buy his own book. And actually, so it's just a representation of the past, and what we are doing.
It's a great target audience.
Yeah. And so what we are doing is to try to check the future, not the past. Which is not easy, and we fail. It's
And Jeremy, do you have any idea how French audiences have been evolving? I know this is probably not your exact area of expertise, but you probably have some notions about how they've changed in the pandemic and going into the future.
That's an easy one, thank you.
Okay.
Just about what just been said, if I may, just to say that I agree with what you said, and from our perspective, from the French government actually, there's a priority now to invest in the development phase and in the writing phase. phase because we think that we need to reinforce this phase, including now it happens mostly in the TV creation, for writing series. You have this these collective writings, and it's getting more and more frequent. But we know that in the schemes we have been creating for a few years, we need to put a special accent on this phase, precisely to create the surprise and to create les pépites of tomorrow. I don't know the word in English, but you understand.
It works. Thank you.
But about the evolving of the audience, we have been trying just now to identify what's been happening now in the post-COVID area. Let's hope that it's going to last.
We're post-COVID, yeah.
Yeah.
Living with COVID.
And so we try to identify the reasons why the frequentation of the theaters is not as high as it used to be in France, because we used to have 200 million tickets sold a year, and now it's a bit lower. And we have to we see that one of the limits is the competition with the platforms, because people during COVID have got used to use Netflix or other platforms. There may be also something about the price of the tickets, and there is globally a loss of the habit of going to the movies. But what we think is now we have to reflect collectively with you, with the professional organization on a European level, actually, on how to get back the audiences into theaters. What we think is that we need to focus on this question of the habit. How to recreate the habit of going to the movies. And for that, we know that historically there has been some virtuous cycles, like when you have a blockbuster and in the same time a more discreet movie which has been really well commercialized and which people want to see. It may create a circle, and that's what we are trying to aim, those virtuous cycles, and that may link theaters and platforms. I mean, we have the chronologie des médias, the media chronology, which was talked about in the previous panel, and this is really important to also to think how to get people back into theaters and to recreate the desire around movie theaters, and also to think a complementarity of the ways of viewing a film, because every time when and where you can see the film, and there are different ways to access the films, including the free TV channels, which allow millions of French viewers to see the same film at the same time, and recreate the community of viewing that is the core of the cinema the public authorities have been defending.
Yes, thank you. You knew a lot about that audience. Thank you. Hannah, what would you say about the audience?
I actually wanted to add on the habit note, because I think so many, before the pandemic, so many had that habit. It was part of our daily lives. But now, Finland especially had such long lockdowns and very heavy restrictions, and I think especially now we need to remind people that cinema really helps us, especially in these times where you could use some escapism every now and then. So when they go back for the first time after the pandemic and experience a magical moment with other people and connect with the film, they come back so much easier. But you have to really get them back now so that we can keep this going again. And I also think it goes back to what we can do much more in terms of brand, that when you talk about mistakes, like films that shouldn't have gotten made, I had people who commented on my lineup recently, for example, with The Worst Person in the World, somebody was like, so it's a film about cheating or what? And like, no. And then after that was Everything Everywhere All at Once, which really is the weirdest pitch in the world, probably, but it's it's films that when you get people to see the worst person in the world, and then you use data to target the people who love that film, to get all those ads on your next ones, and also try, for example, with Everything Everywhere All at Once, we were really trying to activate the gaming people, the 30-year-old guys who don't probably often go to see a female protagonist who does kung fu to save the world from the great evil. And they did, and it sold almost 20,000 tickets in a little more than 3 weeks now. And I'm celebrating the fact that 30-year-old guys want to see a female protagonist fighting the bad guys. Plus she's a little older, plus she has Asian background, and I think when we use the representation right, we can probably get anybody to see anything on the screen, because the experience itself is pure magic, right?
Yes. But do you think it's harder and harder to cut through the noise of modern life and you just mentioned some specific ways, for instance, with Everything Everywhere, you went after those 30-year-old gamer guys, but in general, is that getting harder and harder and harder to just communicate to an audience? Yeah.
I mean,
how do we compete with that, especially with monetarily? Like, a lot of companies spend big billions of dollars and euros to reach the eyeballs, and how does a little Finnish distributor do that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think
huge, but boutique. Yes.
Very short, though. I think the great advantage that we have now is that we can really target super exactly who we want to through the internet, through social media, and actually save a lot, because we can test in advance with just a little bit of a marketing spend. Yeah. We can test, we can see what works and to whom it works and which target group doesn't respond to the film at all. So we don't need huge print or TV or radio or outdoor budgets necessarily. For example, with Everything Everywhere All at Once, we mostly worked online to get this film out there, and it really did work. So data does help us a great deal.
But you can use it not as an algorithm. We like it, yes. Thank you. Data's not bad. I thought I would open up to see if there's a question from the audience for this panel. If you do, just raise your hand. Yes? Are you going to talk about whiskey again? Okay.
I do like the notion of doing, events with whiskey, but Angel Share is a fantastic film. I actually saw it here with a big audience. It's one of my favorite cinema experiences ever to date.
Well, if I may return it, because I had nothing to do with the film, but The Worst Person in the World was one of my favorite films this year. And congratulations for the Oscar nomination on the screenplay. Were you not nominated, or there was something there? No?
No, I'm just the distributor of the film.
No, but I mean, the film was nominated for Best Screenplay, I think.
Yeah, it was.
Anyway, I was super happy. It should have been more into the Oscar dance, but anyway. Okay, coming back to the whiskey story. As I hear we're talking about education. I'm so like this. To me, the film culture. You know what, you want to see something, or you want to read about something, or you want to travel somewhere when you have a certain knowledge of the place. Like there is, curiosity. We are curious, we have that, we want to better ourselves or immerse ourselves in the world. And I'm thinking education, not just education of taking the kids to the cinema, but educating them almost like we have education in literature, about the books and about the authors, but thinking maybe that way of a cultural, educating them in the film culture, like in a golden thread, because there is a golden thread of cinema, because there is a different cinematic style and influences, and that if they could kind of like not tap just into the storytelling, which is on a first level of inspiration, but, you know, massage it deeper so that they can actually,
the sort of cultural history and
Yes.
importance of why cinema.
yeah, absolutely.
Not just watch this one film.
Or the inspiration of the director, or like, you know, it takes a while to get into, oh my God, it reminds me of this film, or oh yes, it reminds me of a film that I haven't seen for so long, and you know, like, but an education of film, and not just for the story, which I believe is fantastic, but for une culture cinématographique. That's one thing. Can I say something else? Is
it a question?
Well, I'm wondering if you guys think about involving, like, Anders. We're talking about DNA, and then I love what you said, this, like, the emotional DNA thing and the craziness of financing. But do you guys, because often we do a film, we deliver the film to a certain date, and then the creative team is out the thing. They may be invited in the theaters, but then it's off to the distributor and to the marketing and all of that, and it get lost. And then you're okay. Well, I saw your film. That's all we get on that
A sort
distribution.
of closer collaboration from the creatives through to the
After the movie is finished and in that distribution. I'm just curious if you guys, if you think it's something that we could be interested.
This be more collaborative. Yeah,
we do it all the time. I mean, anytime I can have a profound discussion with the team who made the film, of course. And like I said earlier, with Aurora Studios, we try to do that as much as we can. Because, of course, that's how you find what's unique in the film, what's the essence, and how you communicate that to the audience.
Anders, what would you say to that?
It's all in terms of education. In Denmark, we were involved years ago in building up education of films for the kids, because we found out there are things in the school, but when they're after the first school, it's not before they came to maybe becoming producers or something like that. So in between, instead of going in the afternoon, we have concerts where they go to football, or they go to chess, or now they can go to film. And then the whole creative process. There are writers, there are directors, film crew that are involved here. So they can take a week instead of going to some others. They can take a week where they go there, they learn the whole process of filmmaking, they write their own scripts, they found out, okay, you will be the director, you will be the scriptwriter, and you will be the actor, and which is so important, because you get some, at least you get a bunch of kids that actually have the tools to understand and go for it. So it is important to be open in that, because otherwise we will lose a whole generation. They don't know how to go to cinema. Yeah.
No, I think we've had some amazing ideas. I wanted to. Did you have something to add, Jeremy?
Yeah, just to say that I agree with this priority, and we have a lot of schemes in France and also all the EFAD in Europe to give grants to subsidize the education to movies, like. We have a lot of partnerships with the Ministry, with the Éducation nationale, the teaching, to bring schools to cinema, high schools, etc., to make the film go into the classes, to have the artists meet young people, and that is a very high priority in all Europe, and which we are also working at with the professionals, but from the public point of view.
Jean-Christophe, did you want to add something there? And then we've got.
Sorry, it was about a little different topic, because we are talking about diversity. Is very strangely our biggest partner in Europe for diversity is as well our biggest threat, because the biggest partner is of course the European Union, which is what allows us to work and have films traveling everywhere. And at the same time, we have this wrong idea to try to fight territoriality every 2 years, always back. Which means as well that every time it's back, if you do that, you destroy the whole European cinema industry. All cinemas, all producers, and so on. So that's really a topic we need to tackle, because it's really an obvious political round idea to think that it would be so great to have European films push a button and they're everywhere at the same time on the continent. But if you do that, the reality is you will have maybe French films for the bigger budget, maybe a few Germans, and all the rest of Europe is dead. So it's
We don't want that. Thank you for
yeah,
bringing this.
and so it's really something where we need to fight for, because territories, even if of course we want the film to be everywhere, it's at the center of the way we are making, distributing films in Europe.
Thank you.
That's
And-
what we have been fighting for with the Commission for a few years. We also had the legal case about this, which we happily won, but it's an everlasting fight, because there is a lot of pedagogy to do with the Commission, and to stress that it's not because in Brussels you can't watch a movie that we have to just bring down territoriality all over Europe, and that's one of the strongest conviction thought of the public also.
Anders?
I totally agree. I don't believe in the single market, because it's rather, and now we also have the data.
Okay. This is another panel, but
The digital single market.
yes, okay, got you. Yeah.
Because we can see the data that I'd rather have our films in 3 European countries with distributors, our ambassadors, loving the film and making sure that it gets out in Finland or Germany, than being forced to make it open to the whole Europe and nobody wants to see it, because that's what happens in some of the films that are available in all of Europe. Nobody watches them. So rather have someone to fight for your films that just bringing them available. So, and then we're back again, that someone thinks that we have to copy the whole American approach, being big, and we don't have to do that.
We can be Europe. I'm going to pause you right there. I think we have time for one quick question. Hello?
Yeah, hello. I was just curious, do you see a trend in the difference in the financing from before COVID until now?
Great question. Thank you. Jean-Christophe, do you want to jump in? Or Anders?
Not from our side, but we haven't been there, maybe because we are doing non-algorithm films, so we're still in what they call the old world, trying to modernize it, so not from our perspective.
Okay. It's still good. It's still easy to finance a film. There's a great question. Great answer. Not easy, but still happening. I'm afraid we're running short on time, but I really want to thank our panel. Really great insights. We have a lot to think about. Thank you so much for your openness and your honesty, and good luck. Thank you. Just to wrap up, I have 2 special guests to bring on stage, who is Pauline Durand-Vial, CEO of FERA, and Laura Holgart-Abbott, CEO of UNIC, and they're going to wrap things up for us.
You start, no? Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so we're only going to take 5 minutes of your time to do the conclusions, because we are aware that we're the only people standing between you and your next meeting, or between you and your first or fourth glass of wine of the day. So bear with us, we'll be short. First of all, huge thanks to all our wonderful speakers, to our great moderator, and to you, the audience, for staying with us for 2 hours and hearing about the European film sector. Pauline and I have been appointed by our colleagues to deliver short conclusions, A, because they really like us, I hope, but B, because we represent the beginning and the end of the value chain. So Pauline represents creators, so film directors, and I represent cinemas. And just to say that it was really important for us, that you can see on screen, to put this event together as representative of people and businesses across the value chain.
And Laura is amazing because she can do this without notes, but I can't. So I'm just going to read my screen here. Bear with me. We wanted to highlight the realities of today's European film sector and why it matters to preserve, promote, and celebrate European cinema, its diversity, and all the people that work in it and for it, including those that we didn't have on stage today, but without whom there wouldn't be any cinemas. And that would be screenwriters, directors, actors, composers, crew workers, to name a few. And our speakers talked about it in a much better way that we could have done. What matters to us all is to ensure that the European film sector continues to thrive in its unique diversity.
So we want to make sure that we, and I say we, not just us in the room, not just us, the industry, but local, national, and European decision makers continue to value cinema. Cinema as an art form loved by all audiences, and value a sector that creates economic value, jobs, and skills. And we need freedom to take artistic and economic risk, to choose our business models, to create, produce, market, distribute, exhibit, territory by territory, audience by audience, according to local tastes. So, diversity, choice and freedom. This is what the European film sector must remain about for the benefit of audiences.
We always talk about fragmentation in Europe, fragmentation of cultures and languages, fragmentation of business models and support policies as if it was a weakness. To us, it's actually who we are, our diversity and our strength. And we would like just to name all the organizations that have been working on this event at this point, and that would be Europa International, FIAD, FARA, FIAP, CEPI, Europa Distribution, UNIC, FSI, IVF, and Eurocinema.
So we're calling on everyone in the sector, but also on authorities at all levels to cherish, support, and do their utmost to celebrate cinema. And walk the walk, don't just talk the talk. Thank you all.